Good morning. I have the privilege of speaking after the break, which even though everybody's not back in the room, you just had coffee, right? So this is the anti-after lunch slot, right? Because everybody's got coffee in them and they're ready to go. Excellent. Well, it is a privilege for me to join you this morning and talk about the Field Strategy Working Group and to give you an update about some of the things that we have been doing over the past year and to talk a little bit about where we're headed in the coming year. I want to first, before we get started, I wanted to thank Rich Radowski. Rich, you can give him a hand. I'm gonna encourage you to give him a hand. Rich has he served as the chief servant of the Field Strategy Working Group for, almost since there was a chief servant. He was the first one, and he has been called to a higher role at Lutheran Bible Translators. He's going to become the new CEO, and he's kind of functioning in that transition role right now. And so they made the mistake of talking to Dave Thomas about becoming the chief servant. So I am here to give you an update. So thank you, Rich, for all of your work. We have appreciated all that you've done. Please pray for me. I want to tell you a little bit about what we do. As a reminder, if this is the first time you've heard about the Field Strategy Working Group, we work to coordinate E10 strategic support for ground level work. We're made up of leaders from across the E10 Alliance from just about most of the organizations. We're bringing on, hopefully soon, someone from Unfolding Word to join us on the Field Strategy Working Group as the newest implementing partner of the E10 Alliance. And so we need to talk about that, friends from Unfolding Word. We need someone from your group to join us. But we also advise the E10 Steering Committee regarding the All Access Goals list in terms of making recommendations. That word recommendations is a very important word. And then we collaborate around ground level funding and project level initiatives. Now there's a lot there and I could unpack all of that, and if you want more information, come talk to me. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about what we don't do. What don't we do as a Field Strategy Working Group? And so what we don't do is we don't dictate which languages get E10 funding and which don't. What does that mean? Well, we're not making decisions about deploying money to projects. Your individual implementing partner organizations are doing that. We're not making decisions about which languages are going to be on the All Access Goals list or were on the All Access Goals list. We're only making recommendations. We don't set strategy for field partners. We work alongside field partners. We encourage field partners, but we don't set their strategy for them. We don't determine which language communities get Bible translation. We are not sitting in an office building in Arlington. We meet in Arlington quite a bit, Arlington, Texas, and saying these languages should have a Bible, these languages shouldn't. These languages should come off the All Access Goals list, these languages should stay. We're not making those decisions. However, we are making recommendations based on our experience, based on research that we've been doing, and we make recommendations to the steering committee. So where have we been focused? First thing I want to talk about in this area is regional collective impact alliances. This is a really interesting element. When the Field Strategy Working Group first kind of spun up, we came together and this was sort of in the shadow of the What Must Change subcommittee, if you remember that. You might remember those terms. And the E10 Steering Committee, through the What Must Change subcommittee, looked at us and said, you guys are the Field Strategy Working Group. So give us a strategy to accomplish the All Access Goals. And we thought, okay. And we felt very uncomfortable. We were like, we work, because all of us we're field people, those of us on this committee, and we work with partners to encourage that work. We work, in some cases, some of our organizations actually do work directly on the field. Others of our organizations only kind of fund that work and encourage that work and help it to spin up. And so when we got that instruction from the CEOs, and God bless the CEOs. I mean, John Chestnut is I love John Chestnut. He is a great guy. I'm thankful that he is serving, and I'm thankful for Larry Jones. All of these CEOs are fantastic people, but sometimes they have goals that are not exactly aligned with where things on the ground are heading. And so in their wisdom, as we pushed back on them a little bit, they were kind of like, okay, maybe we should listen to these guys. And I'm really thankful for that. It really speaks to the character of those CEOs when we said, you know what, when we talk about local ownership as part of the E10 Alliance, we actually mean it. And we believe that when local organizations and local churches own the work, that we don't find ourselves in situations where Bibles sit on shelves and collect dust. That we find ourselves in places where local organizations are owning Bible translation, that they're speaking into what those projects should be, and we see Bibles that get used. And all of that was sitting heavy on our hearts in the Field Strategy Working Group. And we were saying, okay, well, so how would we do this? What do we want to see happen strategically to see these all access goals spun up? And we started talking about this incredible thing that was happening in the Philippines. It's known as the Tambuli Initiative. Some of you are familiar with the Tambuli Initiative. It's this group of local organizations within the Philippines that came together and have decided that they're taking responsibility for the remaining needs in the Philippines. And they decided to work together, to collaborate, and amazing things are happening in the Philippines because of that local, regional, collective impact alliance. And as we stepped back, we thought, well, how could we inspire and encourage that kind of thing to happen in other places around the world? Because we're seeing this to be a really effective thing. And we're thinking about it, we're praying about it. We all have day jobs and we're doing our thing. And we come back together and meet again. And before you know it, we're like, wait a minute, this is happening other places. And we started counting the places where this is happening. And we counted 10 different places where collective impact alliances are taking place. There's one happening, there are multiple probably happening in the Pacific. There's one that's being spun up in Indonesia, Nigeria, the Congo Basin, Ethiopia, India. The Last Command Initiative in India has been happening for years. And these are all national organizations in India that are taking responsibility for the work there. There's one happening in Southern Africa, of course, the Philippines, Botswana, and the Americas. And before we knew it, we realized, you know what, this was God's plan, because we really, as the Field Strategy Working Group, we didn't have anything to do with this. And I started to get excited personally. I'm like, wow, I want to be part of this. Because I know that when these people are taking ownership on the ground, when these local national partners and churches are taking responsibility for that work, we know it's going to have longevity. We know that we're going to see Bibles that get used. And so this morning, by God's grace, I got to make this quick. I sat down with Mark Tabor by accident. Mark walked up to the table I was sitting at, and Mark happened to be at a meeting that was happening that was sponsored by the Bible Society. Well, it was hosted by the Bible Society of Indonesia in Indonesia. And the Bible Society was just kind of like encouraging people to come, and behind the Bible Society was Seed Company and Kartidaya, some other organizations that are saying, we care about Indonesia, we want to take responsibility for the work there. And Mark was telling me, he was at this meeting, he was telling me about the amazing thing that God is doing in Indonesia as a result of these local and national organizations. So what is our strategy at the Field Strategy Working Group? Our strategy is to see these regional alliances form. And the question is, well, what can we do to pour gasoline on these smoldering, in some cases, they're just this very small smoke that's forming in some of these regions. And we're starting to see these alliances spun up. So the next thing that we've been focused, and we've asked the question of, we really deeply need the centralization of ground level information. So if there's anything that we could do to help our organizations and these collective impact, local, regional collective impact organizations communicate well with each other, it's to get information that goes deeper than the amazing data that's in Progress Bible. What's the information about who are the partners on the ground in this language community in Nigeria? Who are the church planters that want to work in that language community? Who are the churches? Who are the leaders of those churches on the ground? So if we wanted to start a Bible translation project, if we wanted to see a Bible translation project started, who would need to be at the table to have that conversation? And if we had a database that made that possible, wow, it would be amazing. We as the Field Strategy Working Group kind of stumbled on this idea when we started asking ourselves, well, which languages should we start talking about? And that we started talking about the 500,000 speakers and above group. And we put together sort of this Google sheet amongst ourselves, and we started gathering information about what we knew about these languages. And it quickly became out of hand, and no one was managing it. And we were like, we've got to do something better. And so our friends who are working with Rev 7.9, here we go. Our friends who are working with Rev 7.9 have decided to put together something called the Language Planning Forum. And E10 is behind this as an alliance, but they're also helping to fund this work. It's going to be a database to contain detailed language and community information about partners and churches, about multilingualism, and all of the details, hopefully as many details as possible, that would be necessary to help us start new language projects. It's going to be actionable information and points of contact at the click of a mouse for the purpose of starting new language projects. So what would make this tool great? Well, we all need to contribute to this tool to make it a quality tool. It's one thing to have a tool. It's another thing for that tool to be made up of quality information. And the only way that happens is if we as an alliance decide to encourage our partners on the ground to put information in this tool. This tool will enhance partnership and collaboration, but only if we press in. So as the Field Strategy Working Group, we are talking about how we can encourage, how can we pour fuel on these ideas and this fire that is burning as we speak. So the last one is the next thing that I want to talk about. My time is almost up, but we have a focus of looking at our tier 2 languages and asking the question, what are the missing pieces? And we know that there are places in the world that it's almost impossible to do Bible translation. I say almost because nothing is impossible for the God that we serve. Some locations make it extremely difficult, though. And efforts have been underway for a long time to address these domains. Some of those efforts relate to working in diaspora communities. And we have a working group that is currently being spun up to gather the best practices and to bring people together who are working in diaspora communities that can help inform how we move forward in diaspora communities in places where we haven't yet worked for diaspora communities. But we're also talking about places where just the government context is almost impossible to work. And so we're talking about spinning up a working group to figure out how do we work in places like that big East Asian country that we all know is very difficult to work in, and that big Middle Eastern country. You don't even know which one I'm talking about, but that big Middle Eastern country that it's really hard to work in. And what could we do to enhance and put our minds together to finish the all access goals in those countries? In these countries, trust is the currency of progress. Relationships breed trust. The Field Strategy Working Group is working to figure out how we can facilitate relationships and trust. And then finally, as we think about where we're headed in the future and what we're working on orality as an entry strategy. Just before I came up here, I was talking to Ed Weaver, and he works on the orality table that E10 has recently spun up. And as the Field Strategy Working Group, we feel deeply convicted that orality is going to be a big part of how we move into the future. And so we want to work to coordinate with the orality table. E10 implementing partner organizations can and should come along these regional collective impact alliances that are forming with our expertise in orality to help move the mission forward in these regions. And so as we close out our time, I hope you can see I'm excited about what's happening with the Field Strategy Working Group. This is by no means an easy task, but what God has called us to is not just us doing it, but it's empowering others to get this job done. The better that we can do that, the more quickly we will see these all access goals accomplished. Thanks.